Abolition of slavery, which was an adjunct of the capitalist system, was never intended to be total. In the first place, a period of indentureship was introduced. Now, according to my simple mind, one is apprenticed if one is going to learn the job which one proposes to undertake. Is that not right? You have an apprentice carpenter, an apprentice mason, an apprentice mechanic. Now the slaves have spent all their time working in the sugar plantations, working in the sugar mills, doing all the work in the house, and you know they did sometimes all the work. All the work. All the work. Working in the house, working in the fields. Now, what further period of apprenticeship is necessary? Isn't that to do injustice to their own language to suggest that a man who has spent his lifetime doing the job he's going to continue to do needs a period of apprenticeship? And then they said, well, there's going to be a 40-and-a-half-hour week. During those 40-and-a-half hours, you give free labor to the former plantation owners. And then the rest of time is yours. And so, there was a man called Bean who owned a sugar plantation at Richmond on the Essequibo coast. He was magistrate, justice of the peace, everything. He didn't like this thing. And then there was a fellow called Damon, a black man. He was so presumptuous as to think that abolition meant abolition, and all this talk about apprenticeship was hooey and poppycock. They taught him a lesson. They taught him a lesson, comrades. They captured him and a few others. They completed the public buildings on the 5th of August. And they hung them outside there in October. And it was clear. They charged him with treason. He had no arms. He made no speech talking about the overthrow of the state. The evidence depended upon the testimony of a deaf planter who claimed to have had a conversation with Damon. Listen, nowadays I hear they are investigating secret executions in the Cameroons. Would to God we could get back some of them to investigate. The execution of a man on the testimony of a self-confessed deaf who said he had a conversation with him. And what was the conversation? He claimed he asked, who is the captain? He wants to talk to the captain, and Damon said, I am the captain. And on that, Damon was executed, and some of the others were sent to Australia. I wonder what has happened to their descendants. And it was not until 1838 that the apprenticeship system came to an end. You notice I say the apprenticeship system came to an end. I didn't say slavery came to an end. The apprenticeship system came to an end. For slavery was part of a system based on the exploitation of others. If you can't do it by direct labor, you do it by other means. Well, at first, they tried direct labor, so they went off, I think, to Madeira. And that explains the Portuguese section of our population. And then they went off to China, and that explains, or Hong Kong rather, in Kowloon. And that explains the Chinese part. But it is alleged they found them unsuitable for the work on the sugar plantations, and then they went off to India. And that explains the Indian part of our population. You had indentured labor. Now, what on earth did that mean? It meant paying starvation wages. It meant corralling people into lodges under the most inhuman and insanitary conditions. And it meant also the capacity and ability to inflict corporal punishment. And right into the period of indentured labor, one found that the hooks for hanging human beings remained on exhibition and also in use. Didn't I say that a rose by any other name would have as many thorns? So what you really had was a change of the name, not a change of the substance. There was the need, because very interestingly, British Guyana, as it then was the most profitable sugar producing of the English-speaking colonies. In addition, from Kitty up, was producing cotton until we reached the position that we were the number 2 cotton producer in the world. So you needed cheap labor, and so it happened. Now, another error we must not commit is to believe that even the formal abolition of slavery that took place in the entire region. For it was not until the 1860s that the United States of America, who had so gallantly fought for their own independence against the same slave owners, cousins in Britain, abolished slavery, and that after a civil war. And there were later dates at which slavery was abolished in various parts of Latin America and the rest of the Spanish or former Spanish colonies. One thing you must give the British